This is section 231. We're going to take a look at quadratic equations. In this lesson, we're going to factor a trinomial and factor the difference of squares. Now, a quadratic function, as a reminder, is in this form, ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, we're used to the factor, or the graphing form of it, and later on in other lessons, we're going to manipulate it to be able to put it into that graphing form. But for now, we're going to be taking a look at quadratic functions in this type. And we're going to be factoring them. Now, we call this a trinomial. Now, the reason why we call that a trinomial, there's three terms. 1, 2, 3. So we need to make sure it's a trinomial to be able to use this factoring. The other thing that we need to know is how to do the greatest common factor. If I had 8x plus 4 and I wanted to factor this, what's in common between 8 and 4 is a 4. And then what's in common between x and nothing is nothing. And then we have to write what's left. Now you have to imagine if you're factoring, it's as if you're dividing each number by that. So the 8 and the 4 reduce, so we get 2x plus the 4 over 4 reduce, and we get 1. That's factoring out something in common. The other thing that we have to realize is when we use this phrase factor, it means to rewrite as multiplication. And that's very important. So let's look at one. Factoring this trinomial. 2x squared minus 22x plus 20. If it's asking us to factor it, we're going to read it right as multiplication. So I have a list here, and this kind of helps us check what we need to do. So the first thing I need to look for, is there anything in common? So between 2, 22, and 20, there is a 2 in common. So I'm going to factor out that 2. Now it's as if I'm dividing everything by what we take out. So I'm left with x squared minus 11x plus 10. Once we do that, it's still a trinomial. What we're going to do is we're going to multiply a times c together and list all the factors. So there's a 1 in front, so a is 1, c is 10, so 1 times 10 gives you 10. Now we're going to list all the factors. 1 times 10, 2 times 5. Now there's a combination here that adds to this middle factor here, so negative 11, but multiplies to that 10. In this case, negative 10 and negative 1. So now what we're going to do is rewrite b in terms of those factors. So instead of writing 11x, we're going to write minus 1x and minus 10x. So negative 11x is negative 1 and negative 10, right? That combines to negative 11. But how did I know to choose negative 1 and negative 10? Those set of factors there. Now we're going to do something called factor by grouping. We cut the problem in half. And on each side, we do greatest common factor. So between x squared and minus x, there's an x in common. Divide by x, you get x minus 1. Now, one of the rules is that if you have a negative as your first term, you also have to factor out the negative. So I'm going to take out the negative. And then there's also a 10 in common. So I'm going to take out the negative 10. And so I'll be left with x, if that reduces, and then minus 1. Now, you know you did it correctly if these are the same. Because now what's in common between those two terms? X minus 1. So you can factor out the x minus 1, and you'll be left with x minus 10. And then we can't forget to bring down that 2. So recap, what did I do here? The first thing, I factored out what's in common. I looked at this and I said there's a 2 in common, so I factored out the GCF. Then I multiplied a and c together and found all the factors. So 1 times 10, I get 10, and I listed all the factors, 1 and 10, 2 and 5. Then I found the combination that adds to this middle number, negative 11. So 1 and 10, if I did negative 1 and negative 10, it would give me that negative 11. Then I rewrote the b in terms of that factor. So I rewrote negative 11 in terms of negative 1 and negative 10. From there, we did factor by grouping. I broke it in half, did GCF on this side, did GCF on this side, and then between these two, we did GCF again. And then we can't forget to bring down the 2. Let's look at another one. So 2x squared plus 3x minus 9. Factor out GCF. Is there anything in common between 2, 3, and 9? No, there's no x in common. Okay, there's no GCF. So now list all the factors of a times c. So a times c, 2 times negative 9, negative 18. Let's list all the factors. 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Now which combination is going to give me a positive 3? Negative 3 and positive 6. If you multiply those, you're going to get negative 18. So now I'm going to rewrite b in those terms. So 2x squared minus 3x plus 6x minus 9. So I rewrote this with this. Now it's factor by grouping. So what's in common? There's an x in common. So you're left with 2x minus 3. What's in common here? There's a 3 in common. So you're left with 2x minus 3. And so what's the same? 2x minus 3. What's in front? X plus 3. And that's going to be your answer. Now let's look at a difference of squares. Now, the way that we identify this, and it just takes a little practice, the way that we identify this is you have two perfect squares, a squared minus b squared, and they have to be subtracted. Now, all you need to do is identify a and identify b, and then you basically plug it in the formula, a plus b, a minus b. So if this is a squared minus b squared, and I identify a, if I take the square root of this, I get 2x, and I take the square root of this, b is going to be 3, I'm going to get a plus b, a minus b. Same thing here. If this is a squared minus b squared, the square root of this, a is 4, b is x, a plus b, a minus b.